Now to start, let's very quickly go over my camera settings. The next thing to think about is the space in which you're going to be shooting your content. Let's talk about how I actually take my photos. Let's get into editing these photos. Hi you guys, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to Vlogmas day number 26, 27. I feel like I've honestly lost track at this point. Either way, welcome to this video. As the title suggests, today I'm going to show you how I take and edit my photos for Instagram, specifically my mirror selfies. If you follow me on Instagram, you will know exactly what mirror selfies I'm talking about. A couple of years ago, I found this beautiful black arched mirror at HomeSense. I picked it up on sale, and at that point in time, I truthfully did not know the impact that this mirror that I got on sale would have on my life and on my career. Some of these mirror selfies that I've posted to Instagram have completely changed the trajectory of my social media influencer career. And I do get a ton of questions on my socials about how I take my photos, how I edit my photos. So I thought that this would be a really great opportunity for me to take you along and just show you my entire process front to back. It's actually a lot more simple than you think it would be, but there are still a couple of tips and tricks that I have kind of accumulated over the past year or so that I've been posting. And yeah, I feel like this is a really great chance for me to show you that and tell you everything that I know. These types of videos are exactly what I wish I had when I first decided to commit to creating content. I feel like the space can be really competitive and a little bit cutthroat, but it really doesn't need to be. There is space for everybody. If anything, I hope that I can just provide some tips and tricks that I have learned along the way to help you in your journey and whatever that looks like. Now, most of the prep that goes into taking the actual photos happens beforehand. So there's just a couple of things that I really quickly want to show you before we get into actually taking the photos. Now to start, let's very quickly go over my camera settings, and you can just really easily access these by going into your settings and then finding the camera menu. In terms of my settings for taking photos, I honestly haven't really changed any of the default settings, but let's have a really quick look through these things anyway, just so you know exactly what my phone is set to. So the first couple obviously just have to do with video footage, but when we click onto formats, I have camera capture under high efficiency. Reading through it, it looks like the difference between high efficiency and most compatible is just the file size. So this might be something to keep in mind if you struggle with storage on your phone. Reading through this now, I'm actually going to change this to most compatible. I have a ton of storage on my phone, so I don't need to worry about that. Same thing goes for photo mode. The difference between 24 megapixels and 12 megapixels isn't that big. As you can see here, it says a photo will approximately be 3 megabytes at 12 megapixels and 4.8 megabytes at 24 megapixels. So it's not that big of a difference. Again, if you do have issues with your storage, it might be better to keep it at 12 megapixels, but because I'm not worried about that, and again, I want the best quality possible, I'm going to keep that at 24 megapixels. This next section that talks about Pro RAW resolution control and Pro default, I think it depends on what iPhone you have, because I didn't have this in my last iPhone. This right here, I think, is an iPhone 15 Pro. If you have the ability to shoot in RAW, I highly suggest that you do. I learned about RAW files through my experience in wedding photography, and as it says down here, a RAW file basically just retains more information in a photo, which basically just gives you a lot more flexibility when it comes to editing and post-processing of that photo. Again, since I don't edit my photos a ton, this doesn't really apply to me as much, but I do notice a huge difference in quality on my iPhone in particular when I shoot RAW versus when I don't. In terms of my composition, I've gotten so used to my process that I don't use a grid, I don't use a level. Mirror front camera just means that when you're taking a selfie, it doesn't flip it when you go to look at the photo, it just keeps it the way that it is. And then viewing outside the frame is not essential, I just have always had it on, so I'm just used to that now. Yeah, again, I honestly have never really looked through these camera settings. There's just a couple of things that I wanted to mention, but I still think it was a good idea to show you exactly what my camera settings are. There are a couple of other things that I'm gonna show you when we actually go to take the photos. But for now, here is just a look at what my camera settings look like. And yeah, hopefully that will help you mimic the same settings on your phone. Once we have our camera settings dialed and ready to go, the next thing to think about is the space in which you're gonna be shooting your content. Again, one of the first things that I do before ever even picking up my camera to shoot is decluttering and prepping my space. Especially if you're creating content in hopes of working with brands or creating marketing materials for brands to use, then I highly suggest that you prioritize this aspect of the video. Just a couple of weeks ago, I had a meeting with the head of partnerships at a company, and she mentioned that she had prior experience with some creators that really needed a little bit of hand-holding and a little bit of assistance when it came to creating aesthetic and good marketing materials for companies to use. And it's little things like making sure that when you're filming, your dirty pile of laundry is out of the way, and making sure that there aren't incredibly distracting colors or patterns in a background of your shot. Because my aesthetic and my color palette is very minimal, very neutral, a small pop of color in the back of my photos can be distracting enough to take away from the whole photo, which then basically just takes away from the point of your content overall, and it also makes you and your page a lot more difficult for brands to want to work with. With our space decluttered, prepped, and ready to shoot, the very last thing that I really quickly want to talk about is lighting. Lighting is probably the most important aspect of my entire process. A couple of vlogs ago, I mentioned really briefly that I had the intention of shooting these mirror photos that day, and it didn't work out because I missed my window for the perfect lighting. I always get questions about what filters I use and how I edit my photos, but the honest truth is that the biggest deciding factor of how my photos turn out is what the lighting is doing that day. Especially right now in the middle of winter when the days are short and rainy and dark, my shooting window is honestly really limited. I haven't been taking any photos just because it's been so difficult to. Because I don't shoot using artificial light, it's super important for me that the weather cooperates. Again, because of my photography background, I can tell you that the best time to shoot photos is when it's overcast but bright. So you want enough light, but sun brings in a whole other factor of difficulty when it comes to shadows and warmth and so on. Obviously, photos in the sun have a time and place, but for the type of photos that I take, ideally it is overcast. Right now it's mostly overcast, there is sunshine, but I have my big blinds acting as a bit of a buffer when the sun does shine through. Again, all that I care about is the fact that this room is illuminated enough for me to take photos in the mirror. If your lighting is way too dark or way too light, you're gonna run into some issues, especially if you're shooting on your iPhone, just because there aren't enough manual settings for you to be able to kind of save yourself and get a properly exposed photo without compromising a lot of quality, which is exactly what I don't want. So, and again, it also depends on what kind of content you're shooting. There are content creators who create the most magnificent content with artificial lighting, and there are some with natural light. I'm just running you through my process, and my process involves the perfect amount of natural light. Now, with all of that said and done, we can finally begin shooting. We've chatted about camera settings, we've decluttered and prepped our space, and we also chatted a little bit about the importance of light. And now that we have checked all of those boxes, let's talk about how I actually take my photos. So I'm gonna go into the camera app. First thing that I'm gonna do is change my aspect ratio from 4:3 to 16:9. Now, immediately you'll see that this obviously changed the aspect ratio of our photo. The reason that I like doing this is because I use my photos for a mix of Instagram stills as well as Instagram stories. Now for Instagram, I like all of my still photos to be 4:3, but if you're posting a story or a reel cover, that aspect ratio is going to be 16:9. So by originally shooting in 16:9, I basically just give myself more image to work with when it comes to creating Instagram stories or Instagram reel covers, as well as my stills. For my stills, I can very easily have a photo that is shot in 16:9 and then just crop it to that 4:3. And the next thing that I'm gonna do is make sure that RAW max is on. Again, this just goes back to what we chatted about in my camera settings in terms of shooting in RAW. It just provides you with a lot more information in the photo, which makes post-processing that much easier. Now, once we're ready to shoot, I usually zoom in to about 1.4, 1.5, just because I found that that works best with the distance of where I stand to my mirror. And because I'm working with a mirror and the lines of my wall and the floor, by zooming in, it just helps with a little bit of that warp. If I'm shooting just using the regular lens, it just looks a little bit warped. The mirror looks like it's getting smaller. My proportions look warped. And there's so many angles that are competing in this photo. We have the angle from the wall. We have this angle from the mirror. We have the angle from this wall behind me, I guess it's beside me, as well as all of the lines on my floorboards, my baseboards, etc. It just becomes an absolute editing nightmare. So I like to help with that a little bit by zooming in. And then, as you can see, that now eliminates the floorboards as well as this sidewall. Once I'm set up, I basically go from pose to pose to pose, and I take a lot of photos. I've already mentioned this in previous videos, but it is so important to take so many photos. Honestly, when I'm out shooting content, I will take hundreds of photos and end up with a handful. Okay, it just goes to show that you want to take as many as possible. Have you ever seen those memes where it's like, this is how to take photos, and it's somebody literally just going like this to the camera shutter button, okay? This is what we want in a content session. Keep in mind, if you are shooting in RAW on our iPhones, it takes a little bit to process the photos. So when I take an image, I stay still in that same pose, because I've done that before where I've gotten too excited and I start shooting, and I'll shoot a photo and move to the next pose. That original first photo that I took, once I look at my photo album, it is completely ruined because I am blurry because I'm moving, okay? So just keep that in mind. Give your phone a little bit of buffer time, especially if you are shooting in RAW. Take a lot of photos. But yeah, that is literally it. I am gonna shoot for a little bit, and then we are gonna reconvene when it is time to edit these bad boys. Gosh, I still really have no idea how to use this new Photos app. That update has just messed me up. Anyway, I've changed into some comfy clothes, and now let's get into editing these photos. Last step of today's video. Now the first thing that I do is go into my camera roll, and as you can see, there are some photos in the mix that are a lot brighter and overexposed. Now this is something that happens when you shoot in RAW on an iPhone. I don't really have an explanation for you. I think it's just the phone trying to auto expose your picture. I did see in the settings that I think you can toggle this off, but again, I didn't want to change anything beforehand just in case that completely messed up my usual process. So this is very normal to what it usually looks like for me. Immediately, I will select all of the photos that are overexposed, and I will just get rid of those. If you do watch my videos, I have shared this before, but all I'm going to do is I'm going to swipe through all of the photos and just favorite any of the ones that I think have potential. These ones look very similar. I don't like the way my eyeball looks in that. Yeah, it's a little bit better in this one. Ooh, we did a little head tilt. I don't mind that. Ooh, we did a little leg lift. I don't mind that. I don't usually wear shorts a lot, so I had to find some new poses today. Okay, once I have all of my favorite photos favorited, I am then just going to simply delete all, oh wow. Delete all of the photos that were not favorites. We have our few photos left, and now it is time to actually edit them. Now to edit them, I pretty much do everything right here in the Photos app. The only thing that I'm gonna do is crop the image. Because most of these images are just gonna be an Instagram still, I'm gonna immediately crop them to that aspect ratio. I realized that earlier I misspoke. For Instagram, the ideal ratio isn't 4:3, but it's 4:5. So we go into crop. Up in the top right corner, you can see there's a bunch of different rectangles. We're gonna click that and then change the aspect ratio from 9:16 to 4:5. And then from here, the only other thing that I adjust is these angles. So I like to transform my photos, which means that I rotate them and then I change their angles slightly on the X and Y axes just because of those lines that I told you. So this basically just helps clean up the lines of my mirror as well as my wall and my floor to help make everything look square and clean and just how I like it. Just like that, with everything said and done, with those same steps rinsed and repeated, I have a handful of great photos that you will probably see on my Instagram ASAP. By the time that this video is posted, they honestly might already be up. As you can see, very, very simple process. But yeah, I hope that that helped some of you guys. My intention behind this video is just my hope that it just shows you that you really don't need to do a lot in order to create meaningful content. You don't need to have all the equipment or all the softwares or all the paid apps or all of the experience. It just takes a lot of repetition, and I hope that by giving you some of the tips and tricks that I have learned through the countless of repetitions that I have done, that it saves you a little bit of time and helps you get a bit of a head start in your content creation journey. But yeah, honestly, I think that brings us to the end of another video. Thank you guys so much for watching. It honestly means the world to me. I cannot believe that we are getting so close to the end of December, which means the end of Vlogmas. I tried to convince myself that I believed I could do it, but a big part of me really didn't think that I would get anywhere close to completing Vlogmas. And now I think I have 5 more days to go, and I feel pretty confident that we're gonna be able to do that. So if you've been along with me for the ride, I really appreciate the heck out of you. Please let me know if there's anything else that you want me to chat about. There are so many different aspects of content creation that I think a lot of people probably have questions about. So if you have any questions, send me a DM or leave some comments below. And yeah, besides that, do all the things, like, comment, share, subscribe, and I will see you guys all tomorrow.